Woke or a Joke, a Gen Z review.
Welcome to Woke or a Joke, a Gen Z review. I'm a Zennial.
And I'm a Gen Zer.
I absolutely love movies from my childhood. However, I've come to realize that some of them just don't hold up anymore. With the help of my resident Gen Zer, I will learn how problematic my childhood truly was. Today, we will review Dutch. The Gen Zer will tell us if the movie is woke or a joke. If the movie is determined to be a joke, then we'll workshop a rebooted version to save this beloved movie. Is it beloved? I don't know. Maybe. If we're unable to come up with a retooled version to satisfy the Zennials' nostalgia and the Gen Zers' thirst for justice, then the Zennial will burn his copy of the original problematic movie in all of its racist, misogynistic glory, never to be watched again. So, let's get into this. Dutch, released July 19th, 1991, written by John Hughes and directed by Peter Feynman. Working man Dutch, played by Ed O'Neill, is dating the divorced Natalie, and he offers to drive her stuffy 13-year-old Doyle, played by Ethan Randall? We'll get into that. From his private school in Atlanta to his mother's home in Chicago for Thanksgiving. Doyle is not interested as he blames Natalie for the divorce and wants nothing to do with his mom's new boyfriend, especially given the man's lowly working class roots. This pairing makes for a journey filled with bickering, mishaps, and eventually bonding. So, friend, is this movie woke? Or is it in fact a joke?
It's definitely a joke.
Oh no, Dutch is a joke?
It's definitely a joke.
Oh no, can you tell us why that it's a joke?
Okay. So, our main characters are Doyle, the random child, and then the mom's boyfriend, who I forgot the name of.
Yep, Natalie. Or, Dutch.
Oh.
Yeah, the namesake of the movie. Yep, Dutch.
Okay, so then there is Dutch. And Doyle is just generally the worst. I don't think he's the main problem of the movie. I think that he's, fine enough. He's a horrible person, but I'm blaming, his parents on that. However, the boyfriend, Dutch, he just starts pushing Doyle a lot. He's very violent with this child.
Yeah.
When they first meet, he just Doyle goes to a boarding school, and then Dutch just shows up at the boarding school and goes into Doyle's room, and Doyle is not there. He's over doing whatever he does. I don't even remember. And then, and so then he just, goes into Doyle's room, and then he's, touching all of Doyle's things, which, that's weird, because, that's not even his kid, and he's just, touching all this kid's things, very invasion of privacy. And then the Doyle, he comes back into his room, and then there's this random guy who he's never met in his room. And so then, an action scene ensues, and they have a fight because Doyle is very confused because he does not know who this person is, and this person has just broken into his room, basically. And then they have a fist fight, and then the boyfriend, I think at one point during the fist fight, he does shoot Doyle with the BB gun.
No, I think Doyle shoots. Yep.
Yeah, he definitely shoots the boyfriend. I think that then Dutch just threatens to shoot him with the BB
because
gun.
then it becomes a whole bit.
Yeah, that was also weird. Because then throughout the movie, he's like, oh, I still owe you a shot with the BB gun. Still gonna straight up murder you with this BB gun.
Like, I remembered that as being like a bit in the movie. Like, I remembered like that was a thing. I didn't realize how much of a running joke it was and like how often it was mentioned. And like at the end, they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna freaking shoot you, man. And the mom's like, what? Wait, what? Oh, okay. Haha. Wait, what? Okay. What?
That was a good reenactment.
It was accurate, wasn't it?
It was.
Sorry. Go on, friend.
Yeah, and then he does like trip the kid, which like kind of violent. But because he could have just like grabbed the kid, but he trips the kid, and then he grabs the kid and throws him just like across the room. And then the kid is just like sat on the floor for a little bit. And then he tries to get Doyle to leave his room and come with him because he has to pick him up for Thanksgiving. And then he threatens to like punch Doyle in the face. And then next scene is him just like carrying this kid by like his shirt, and then also he's gagged the child.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and then he just like has this kid tied up in his car in the back seat. And
Yeah.
he is gagged, and he is just like dying, and there's no seatbelts being worn by him.
Oh, yeah.
because he is just on the back seat laying there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to put a
Yeah.
seatbelt on that way, right?
And so then, at one point, the kid eventually gets the gag out of his mouth and is like, hey bro, like stop the car. You have just kidnapped me, and I will sue you because I'm rich. And then, so, Dutch just, like, violently stops the car suddenly, and then, because the child is tied up in the back and not wearing a seatbelt, then he just falls onto the floor of the car. So that was also very rude of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at one point, now eventually, he unties Doyle. He lets him sit up in the front seat with his seatbelt on. And then, Dutch asks if the kid is okay with smoke, and then he says no. And then Dutch starts smoking in the car, so that's rude.
Yeah, that is.
And then, I don't know, then he just, like, Dutch buys a bunch of fireworks, and then there's, like, this scene where there is a lot of, like, fireworks, and it's not necessarily a joke, but it's just, like, it went on for a very long time, and it did, like, nothing. Like, maybe it was a bonding moment between them, but, like, it
No.
wasn't.
No, it was 4 minutes of just like Dutch just being an idiot, and like Doyle's just like, yep, this has confirmed everything that I have assumed about you for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
What?
And then they go to a motel. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go to a motel now. However, then Doyle and Dutch get into some sort of argument. I don't even know. And then, Dutch kicks Doyle out of the car and is like, you can walk 50 miles to the motel. It's down the road.
Yeah, 50 miles down the road at nighttime. And it's like, clearly it's cold out.
Yeah, there's snow
There's
all over
snow.
the place. And then Doyle is sad. And I'm assuming that the motel was not actually 50 miles away, but I don't know how he's supposed to find this motel.
Yeah, because he gets there alive. That's number one. And like it is in the evening still, so there's no way that he would be able to walk 50 miles. But even if it's like 5 miles.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, like, oh, it's just down the road 50 miles. Okay, cool. So there's just one random hotel, and I'll know to go to that one specifically. And then I think he even knows, like, somehow what room to go into, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe he could just, like, sense the bad vibes from that room, though.
Yeah, well, he could probably smell the fire from the fireworks.
And then... Oh, then the next day... They have breakfast at some random restaurant, and then Dutch and Doyle get into another argument, and then Dutch is like, "Oh, you think you're better than me, fool? At least I can pay for my breakfast," and then he doesn't let the kid have breakfast. So, like, that's also rude.
Yeah.
And then there were just, like, shenanigans happening for the rest of the movie. Nothing necessarily woke, nothing necessarily a joke. It just was.
So, okay, so we'll go over a few things. So, he's credited as Ethan Randall, but this is actually Ethan Embry. And I don't think I ever realized that Ethan Embry was Doyle in this movie Dutch. And I watched Dutch like so many times. I think it like played it on HBO a lot or whatever. And so I watched this movie way more than I should have probably, especially watching it now and realizing it probably doesn't hold up very well. But yeah, and Ethan Embry, I know him probably best from Empire Records, which we should probably watch that movie. That might be a fun one to watch. Yeah, and then after I think a year or two, then he switched to Ethan Embry opposed to Ethan Randall. Yeah, and Ed O'Neill playing Dutch, it's like even more annoying than I remembered. And I remembered as a kid, like, this guy is a weird guy, like, but it was even worse. Okay. But what about the racy playing cards?
Okay. That was like, I don't even know how to explain that.
Yeah, so Dutch has this pack of playing cards, and it has racy pictures on it, and then there's this like everything in this movie, it's just this prolonged scene, and Dutch is just creepily looking in the camera like, yeah. I'm sorry, I just offended you, I apologize. But then he's making the playing card go up, and you start to see a nude model, and he's showing this to Doyle. It's like this 13-year-old kid, like, hey, look at this. Like, super uncomfortable.
Well, and then later there's a scene where then Doyle has the cards and he's like looking at them, and then the Dutch is supposed to be like asleep. Like, he's in bed, Doyle thinks that he's asleep, but then you just have a shot of like Dutch looking over there and smiling at Doyle as he's looking at these cards.
Yeah, and then at breakfast in the morning, he's like, how's it going, Ace? Like a call back to that. Like, Dutch is a little bit more involved in Doyle's like sexual awakening than any adult should be toward a child. It was very strange. Yeah, and then like, I don't know, for me the movie, like at the end, it was just very like uneven, because okay, you've got these two guys that are kind of the worst in their own way. Like, obviously Doyle, he's a kid, so I think you can, kind of play up some of that to him being a kid, and like you were saying, it's probably the parents and that issue. And then you have Dutch, who's just like a straight up weirdo. But toward the end, like Doyle starts to change as a character. a little bit. Like he has some
Yeah.
sort of character development. Dutch never does, and I think he gets worse because he really starts to manipulate Doyle, like toward the end, like in the gas station, where he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna leave your mom," like blah blah blah. You know, I mean, he starts to get really bad, and I think like we're supposed to like Dutch. Like Dutch is supposed to be like a good guy, like a good working class guy. But he also like owns his own construction company and all that. Like he's done well for himself. So they try to like make him to be one thing, but he is something else. So if we were to change up this movie a little bit and make it more woke, what could we do? So we can have all the like the beginning wackiness, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So we just had like, so, you know, Dutch and Doyle meet. They're, you know, obviously, you know, clear opposites. Doyle, you know, comes from money and is, you know, well-to-do and very book smart and things like that. Dutch is a little bit more unpolished. You know, kind of a working class kind of guy. And is there anything that we would have to like take out though in the beginning that's just like too much?
I think that Dutch needs to be like a better character from the beginning, like, because he was just too the worst at the beginning. I don't even think that Doyle and Dutch would like connect at any point. Because he, like, straight up is beating up a child at the beginning, and I feel like shouldn't have that in the movie.
Okay, so it should be more like, you know, okay, Dutch, he's like a working class guy. Maybe he, like, does a couple things that, like, you know, doesn't show, like, the most etiquette. He's a little unpolished, but he's not necessarily, like, a jerk and showing, like, nude cards to children.
Maybe he can be like kind of a jerk, like, oh, he kind of like grabs Doyle like mildly aggressively, where it's like, oh, he's a little bit raging, but
yeah, after getting shot by a BB gun, I mean, you know, I understand some of it, you know, like, you know, you're human.
He's like angry, but not a scene of him beating up a child
and kidnapping him.
Yeah.
So maybe take out the kidnapping part and you're good. Now, is there anything that we can do to the end to like wrap it up? Does Doyle, the kid, does he have enough of character development, you think, in the original film?
I think that his character arc can stay mostly the same, but I think at one point he like meets they go to like this homeless shelter, and then he meets this one family there, and that's like his main character arc, is he just like learns that he just like shows compassion towards this family. And I think that maybe that scene would happen a little bit earlier on, and then smaller things would happen later on that would show more character development.
Yeah. Because there's that one scene before that where he sees a guy and he's like, I think they're like at a truck stop or something, and the guy's like kind of washing up in the bathroom. And Doyle is very much like judging this guy. And maybe if that's reversed, like he has this awakening, then he's at the truck stop or wherever, sees this guy, and then maybe he can do some sort of gesture or something to this gentleman to show, you know, that kind of compassion or whatever, and things like that. Yeah, that makes sense. And then what do we do about Dutch? Because I guess he would sort of be different to begin with. So does he need to have any sort of character development or arc at all? Or does he stay just kind of like this bumbling oaf, but, you know, hey, he's a nice enough guy. He doesn't do weird stuff.
I mean, he probably still does, like, some weird stuff. Just, like, not as weird. I don't know. Maybe at, like, by the end, he has an understanding of Doyle as a person. It's like more of a bonding moment connection. He does not shoot Doyle with a BB gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at the end, in the original, he also like punches Doyle's dad in the face. So like maybe we take that out.
Okay. Yeah, because maybe it's more of a kill him with kindness type thing. Because in the beginning, Doyle's dad and Dutch meet, and they kind of have a little bit of a thing, just, kind of back and forth, talking or whatever, badly about each other. So maybe Dutch can almost feel like a little bit bad for the dad that he's not connecting with his son. And Dutch realizes that, Doyle is such a good kid, when you take away some of the things that happened in the beginning, that at the end he is a good kid and just maybe, has had a tough childhood. Even though he comes from money, it doesn't mean that there aren't issues. He has to go to this boarding school and he isn't really nurtured and stuff like that. And so maybe Dutch could, kind of have, feel bad, have that bit of compassion, and then just, kind of just feel bad for his dad that he would, he just doesn't see how great of a kid he is.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't have to punch him. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I think I'd watch that movie. I won't watch this movie anymore. I won't watch Dutch anymore because it didn't hold up very well for me. But your version, I think I would definitely watch that. Now I wanted to get into a little bit of trivia. There were actually plans to do a sequel that never materialized, which I'm not sure what a sequel would be. Any ideas what you would do with a sequel?
Our sequel, I think, would focus on the character arc of the dad. Because I think, it ends where the dad, he's, just kind of confused when Dutch talks to him.
Yeah.
And then in the next one, it's Doyle now has his family with both Dutch and his dad.
Okay, cool. And then maybe they have to do some sort of another wacky road trip adventure, but, there's some adversity, but then bonding at the end.
Yeah, maybe this is a Christmas special.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because this was their whole thing was they were going home for Thanksgiving. So that's why it's our Thanksgiving edition of Woke or a Joke. There were a number of people that were up for being Dutch opposed to Ed O'Neill. John Candy was the number one pick that they wanted to get. And then Tom Hanks, Jim Belushi, Robin Williams, John Goodman, and Bill Murray were all considered to play Dutch, but they were all busy at the time, apparently. And even the great Melvin Gibson, he turned down the role because apparently he was doing Lethal Weapon 3 and Forever Young at that time. So, a little bit more trivia. Doyle's last name is Standish, and that's the same last name of Molly Ringwald's character in The Breakfast Club. So, John Hughes, he does all these movies that are kind of based in Chicago or Chicago suburbs. And so there are stands on the internet that are oh, see, Doyle is her brother and blah, blah, blah. And all it's no, that doesn't make sense. That he would not be her brother because it seems like he's a single child or only child. And in the UK and Australia, it was called Driving Me Crazy, not Dutch. So bits of trivia. And do you want to hear what our friends at Common Sense Media thinks?
I would love
about
to
Dutch?
hear what they think.
So Common Sense Media, they describe this movie as Dutch is an argument for the strong male role model in a boy's life, even if that role model is a swearing, cigar-smoking parental figure who turns borderline abusive as a kind of reverse psychology. It's a reverse psychology. The trouble with this movie is that it's trying to be both a family values film and a teen version of A Christmas Carol. Doyle learns to respect people who have less money than he does, but the whose is bigger posturing between a grown man, Dutch, and a young boy, Doyle, is ridiculous. And the only women in the film are ditzy waitresses, prostitutes, and a completely ineffectual mother. In fact, the most interesting part of the film is how Natalie's helplessness is a prerequisite for Doyle to play the big, strong man. If Natalie would just stand up for her son and tell him to can the insults, Dutch wouldn't need to be the knight in shining armor. Unwittingly, Dutch teaches teens a little something about gender roles and how you can't have one without the other.
I don't even know what that means.
That it's not good is what that means. That's yeah. Now what did you think about that whole like prostitute scene where like they're the ladies?
I think it was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
They were probably my favorite characters.
But what she like the one is kind of coming on to Doyle.
That was weird. That was my main problem with it.
Okay.
Well, she wasn't coming on to him, but she wasn't like stopping him either.
Yeah.
So that was my main problem with it. But the one who was like trying to steal from them, that was my favorite character.
Yeah, she is a hero. Like, because she's driving, like, with her knee, like, steering, and also trying to steal everything, which is pretty great, yeah. And then some Common Sense Media reviews. This is from Doug Schroeder, you know, the famous Doug Schroeder. He says, while it has a couple of hide your eyes moments for the youngsters, it has some fantastic positive messages to portray. There are some wonderful scenes portraying compassion for other human beings, as well as learning to not take his mother for granted. Add to that the message that all humans are created equal, blue versus white collar, and this movie is a moral winner. I think he watched a different movie. Don't know. Yeah, and it's like at the very end, Doyle's like, maybe I don't hate my mom. It was like out of nowhere. It's like, mother? Ma?
I don't know why he did that, because he like went up to her like he's never seen her before and like he wasn't expecting her to be there.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. And then Elmenrod says, don't let the official review dissuade you. In addition to the divorce issues, the bigger story in this movie is a boy's understanding of people without a class bias. Sure, there's some crude behavior / language as they sink into lower classes, but it is only typical John Hughes stuff. I think a typical middle school student would enjoy this movie. Do you think a middle school student would enjoy this movie?
I mean, I'm almost a middle school student, and I did not.
Yeah, well, you're a ninth grader.
Well, yeah, but that makes me
almost.
almost.
But it sounds like you're all like almost like you're going into middle school. Yeah, fair enough. That's fine. Okay, so that's the movie. Anything else you want to mention about Dutch?
No.
That's it. Okay. Well, hopefully Dutch hasn't made it so you don't want to watch any more movies with me. And maybe we can watch another one another time. So thanks for listening to Woke or a Joke, a Gen Z review. Please subscribe to our podcast, join our Facebook group, and follow us on the Instagram. And now we're recording on YouTube. So you can check us out on YouTube as well. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Woke or a Joke, a Gen Z review.